Once you have your Australian nursing license, you can start searching for vacancies in a website called 𝐷𝐷𝐿.com. Most private hospitals and organizations use this website to advertise for job vacancies. However, if you are wanting to work in a public hospital, you will need to check different websites depending on which state you prefer to work. So, for example, you can search the website jobs.health.nzw.gov.au for New South Wales. Jobs.act.gov.au for Australian Capital Territory, careers.vic.gov.au for Victoria, jobs.tas.gov.au for Tasmania, iworkfor.sa.gov.au for South Australia, search.jobs.wa.gov.au for Western Australia, jobs.nt.gov.au for Northern Territory, and smartjobs.qld.gov.au for Queensland. To give you a bit of a background, I studied and became a registered nurse in the Philippines, and I eventually found a job in New Zealand. I lived and worked there for 10 years, and this year, our family moved to Australia, and I got a job offer while still living in New Zealand. By the way, if we're just meeting, kia ora, my name is Binibining Veronica. Welcome to the Little Cup from New Zealand to Australia, where I help people create better plans about moving abroad. So if you want to plan better, make sure to hit like and subscribe. Salamat po! On my previous video, I showed you how to become a registered nurse in Australia if you are a registered nurse in New Zealand. If you missed that video, I will write it up in the info card above. Otherwise, do let me know if you want a separate video on how to become a registered nurse in Australia if you don't have a registered nurse license in New Zealand. Back to job hunting. In my experience, I created an account in 𝐷𝐷𝐿.com and I pretty much started browsing for vacancies there. I think it will be very helpful if you already have a preferred state because that will definitely narrow down your searches. Personally, my preferred states were Victoria, Northern Territory, and Queensland. In my personal search and reading of cost of living, I thought and still think that Victoria is really expensive, especially Melbourne area. However, I have a friend and an ex-workmate who lives in Geelong, so they were telling me about great things about Geelong, and I kind of wanted to move there because of their stories as well. And I've also heard that it's cheaper to fly from Northern Territory to the Philippines. So I thought, oh, that will be practical and beneficial. And then finally, after doing a lot of reading, I've came to realize that Queensland is one of the higher paying state in terms of nurses' salary. So I thought that should be on our list as well, because after all, we were moving to Australia in hope of better pay. So yeah, those were my reasons, I guess. During this job search, I was also very picky in the roles that I was applying for. As you know, I was a stroke nurse specialist for a while before becoming an educator, and I wanted to work on similar roles. So hopefully similar areas in stroke or education. During this time, there were also some moments where I would cast a wide net and just apply and see what vacancies are there in different states, just so I can compare the working hours and compare the salary as well. But after talking to my husband and reflecting on the pros and cons of living in a particular state, after reading so many blogs and watching YouTube vlogs, asking my university classmates, my ex-workmates, my friends, we've decided to move to Queensland. Each state in Australia also has a capital city. And if you go further from CBD, there's also the outback rural area. So for example, the capital city for New South Wales is Sydney. For Australian Capital Territory, it's Canberra, which is also the capital city of Australia. For Victoria, it's Melbourne. For Tasmania, it's Hobart. For South Australia, it's Adelaide. For Western Australia, it's Perth. For Northern Territory, it's Darwin. And for Queensland, it's Brisbane. After narrowing down the state where we want to live in, we then had to decide if we want to live in a CBD area or if we wanted to live further from CBD, more rural outback area. And for our personal choice, we thought that it's more practical for our family if we live within Brisbane area. I found a vacancy for an education role in a private hospital. And by the way, in Australia, they have a role here called clinical nurse facilitator, which is a step lower than an educator. And that is the role that I applied for. I was shortlisted and was invited for a phone call panel interview and was offered the full-time role. I accepted the offer, but I had to submit a lot of requirements before I actually received my contract. So for your reference, the pre-employment checks that were required by this private hospital included COVID-19 vaccination status. Specifically, they wanted a record through Australian Immunization Register, other vaccination status, Hep B, MMR, varicella, DPT, quantiferon TB gold, Australian National Police check, notarized or certified copy of my work history, notarized or certified copy of postgraduate education. Now, just a disclaimer, your Australian employer may not necessarily ask you to submit the same documents that I have submitted. So, for example, I have a friend who recently moved from New Zealand to Queensland and she got a job in an aged care facility and she didn't have to submit as much documents as I did. So, as always, our experiences will be different and that's okay. Anyway, if you are required by your employer to submit a COVID-19 vaccination certificate through the Australian Immunization Register, you can go to a GP practice here in Australia, sign up for a GP practice and ask your GP to record it through AIR. All you have to do is just provide your COVID-19 vaccination certificate. Or you can also do what I've done, which is going to a pharmacist or a chemist here in Australia, providing my evidence, and then they recorded it in ARI on my behalf. For the Australian Immunization Register, you need to have an IHI number. So that's the individual healthcare identifier. So imagine in New Zealand we have NHI. So it's the same thing here. They call it IHI. And then if you are a New Zealand citizen, you can apply for Medicare and IHI number at the same time. However, Medicare application deserves a separate video. So we'll talk about that next time. For other vaccination status, I just booked a schedule with PathLab and paid for the blood test, and they emailed the results to me. By the way, if you are enjoying this video, please hit subscribe and turn on your notification bell so you will know when I upload new videos just like this one. And if you want to support the channel, click that super thanks icon at the bottom of the video or simply buy me a coffee by clicking the link below. Alternatively, a big thumbs up always goes a long way. Salamat po! Next, Australian National Police check. This was actually the most frustrating part for me because I thought it'll just be straightforward. So I was given the option to complete this through Fit to Work police check, which was $36 plus GST. I opted for that, but the process was really difficult because Fit to Work were asking for documents I didn't have, like proof of living in Australia, which I couldn't provide because I wasn't living in Australia at that time. And the support team at Fit to Work couldn't really help me more regarding this matter. So in the end, I applied directly to the Australian Federal Police, paid the fees, submitted the documents they needed, and got my certificate. Next, certified copy of work hours. Now, my employer required this to decide my pay scale. My husband is also a nurse and he got a job in a different private hospital, and he was also asked to provide a certified copy of his work hours to determine how much his pay will be. However, for my friend who was recently hired in an aged care facility, she was not required to submit this document and she was offered the top band of her scale. Next, in Australia, they have postgraduate education allowance. This means you get extra dollars depending if you complete a postgraduate certificate, a postgraduate diploma, or master's degree. So in New Zealand, we don't have allowances like this. I think if anything, the closest I can relate this to is the PDRP allowance. However, even as a senior designated nurse in New Zealand with an expert portfolio and master's degree, I did not get this PDRP allowance. However, if I was not in a senior designated role, I would have qualified for a PDRP allowance in New Zealand. So yeah, after moving to Australia, it's nice to get an extra allowance on top of my base rate because after all, it took me 4 to 5 years to complete that master's degree. And if you want to know more about my postgraduate journey, I'll write the link to the video in the info card above. Now, if you are searching for vacancies at seek.com, do know you can filter the results depending on the specialty of nursing, depending on the location where you want to work, the state, depending on the hours that you want to work, full-time, part-time, or casual basis. Also, for your reference, if you are wanting to work like casual contracts, some of my friends have signed up with Healthcare Australia, and there's also another company called Affinity Nursing Recruitment. So I thought I'll just share that to you for your reference as well. In terms of nursing vacancies, there's definitely a lot of vacancies in the aged care area, working on the hospital, bedside nursing. There's definitely a lot of vacancies being published at the moment. So yeah, given the opportunity, let me know which state in Australia would you like to work in. Do you prefer to work in Northern Territory, New South Wales, Queensland? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you are moving to Australia, make sure you check my quick guide to make sure wala kang nalimutan. As always, I wish you all the best with your journey and I hope you will be blessed. I'll see you soon. Bye!